Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
So today,
Good morning, Vivek.
today it's the 41st session of our Sunday webinar series. The topic is managing content, issues and strategies, and our speaker for today, Soma Bhattacharya. She has presented a session earlier also. She's a senior editor and an ICF member. So today it's going to be a second webinar for ICF Sunday webinar series. Over to you, Soma.
Thank you. Thank you, Vivekji. Always a pleasure to get back to a fraternity of like-minded people. And it's nice to see this forum growing every day. I mean, there are more and more people who seem to be interested in Copy Editors Forum, and so our numbers seem to be growing. And thanks to the efforts of Vivekji, the horizons seem to be expanding every day from plain WhatsApp group to Facebook to LinkedIn, and it's always expanding. So, like Vivekji has just said that I shall be talking about content, but before that, I'd like to give a brief introduction about myself. I'm Soma Bhattacharjya, and it's been 20 years certainly that I've been associated with this whole business of bookmaking, more specifically textbooks making. And my journey started with the what used to be called the National Open School. Now it's called the National Institute of Open Schooling, which is a premier distance learning agency in the country, operating at the school level, which was, and my association goes back to the late 90s. And over these many years, I've had the occasion to work with some of the great minds associated in material production. Had occasion to work in great opportunities, and also see some fantastic experiments with textbooks and materials. Now, all of this experience and exposure was not only concentrated in Delhi, though I was based in Delhi. However, my work took me to different parts of the country, and some of the works in material writing, material production, material development with varied clientele has been fantastic. Post the open school experience, I moved to the Cambridge University Press, and then I moved into Macmillan, which has really been a with which I had many years of experience, not once but twice. My last assignment with the Macmillan was as a managing editor for ELT schools. And Macmillan, yes, as in its truest traditions, has helped groom me with various opportunities, with great minds, with great experiences, great colleagues. So a lot of what I will be presenting today, or what I presented the last time also, was based on my exposure to the Macmillan years and to Macmillan relationships. Briefly, I worked as an editorial consultant with McGraw-Hill. Again, that was with school books, so that's where I stand in front of you. But presently, I'm a freelancer. I work as a freelancer and as a consultant to publishers who require my support, and I do it as best as I can. So so that is why I thought that we need to look at content today, because the past year, which has been historic in many senses because of the COVID pandemic across the world, it has affected our lives in many ways, not just in livelihoods, but also in the way we look at our own selves, at our own capabilities, and what all we can do sitting at home for others. there has been an increase in the number of uh, mm, increase in the number of content delivery agencies over the past year. And being a freelancer, I've had the occasion to look at some of the content or even work with some of these agencies. And that's the background to this particular webinar, because while there is a lot of interest in content, there is also a need to have the packaging done well so that the objectives of content creation are fulfilled. Now, for we are into educational publishing, and so we need to be very careful about what we give out to our next generation. And that's where the importance of content, meaningful content, comes about. So that's the topic for today. Yeah, I'll now share my slides with all of you.
Wait a minute.
Give me a second, it's coming on. Can you see my slide?
Yes.
Is the slide visible? Right,
Yeah,
thank you. So that's the topic for today: managing content, issues, and strategies. First of all, let's begin by defining what we understand by content. Within the context of educational publishing, we look at content as any defined area of knowledge or skill, and that we say is content. Now, I have put in a curriculum within brackets because because everything is content. Advertising is also content. The stuff that we see written along the bus, on the road, that's also content. What we see in IT firms, that's also content. So anything which is created is content. But for our purposes, we will stick to the curriculum and the syllabus needs of content. So the focus of my presentation today has got to do with educational content. And for that, I'd say that any defined area of knowledge or skill is content. And that's what I will be talking about as from how to manage it and what issues come about and what are the strategies we need to think about in today's times. Now that's the background. The year 2020. The year 2020 has been phenomenal, has been historic. And so this is the background against which we will be looking at content. Like I gave a brief idea about how this whole idea of this webinar came about. It's because of what I have faced personally with content delivery agencies over the last year. So 2020, against that background, against the year of the pandemic, content has assumed great significance, and I foresee that at least this will continue for the next year or so. So we need to set matters straight if we need to deliver meaningful content, because content will be discussed, debated, played up with over the next 1 year or so for sure, till we understand how we regularize our lives, how we regularize all our schools, our colleges, our universities over the in the near future. So 2020 is the background against which we are looking at this seminar. Now, why organize the content? Having defined what the content is, we need to understand why we need to organize the content. Why not just give it in random? That's because we need to fulfill some curricular objectives. Content cannot be based in random. It is not a random creation, but there has to be a thought process, and that thought process is rooted in the curriculum of the day. Curriculum naturally will be specific to age, to clientele, to situations. So the first reason is to fulfill curricular requirements, we have to organize our content in a meaningful way. And what will be the objectives? The objectives will be to impart the right kind of knowledge, the right kind of skills. And if content is based on a syllabus, the end should be evaluation. So the content needs to be organized in that way and imparted in that way so that the evaluation objectives as well are fulfilled. If we organize content, there is also the advantage that the teaching learning process will be meaningful. Teachers will know what to deliver and when, and students too should know what to expect and how. To develop meaningful learning content would also mean to develop effective learning tools. What are those learning tools that are required for each level? So for example, at the pre-primary stage, it may be, let's say, blocks, it may be learning blocks, it may be flashcards, it may be posters, it may be huge spread out books and stuff like that. Maybe at a later level, it may include maps, it may include graphs, it may include charts, it may include a whole range of other stuff like PPT and video lectures, audios, and other kinds of electronic support devices. So that's the reason why we need to organize content so that the learning becomes more sensible. Now, the examples of content as we see around us are textbooks, workbooks, teacher manuals, question banks, online resources, and learning management systems. I thought it's very essential to talk about the online resources and learning management systems at this point, since we are looking at content against the background of 2020. What are the learning management systems? Learning management system, or the LMS, that is also a big method to organize content. Now, how does that work? With textbooks, workbooks, teacher manuals, it's very clear. The entry point for a content into a publishing house is the manuscript, that someone writes out the textbooks or the workbooks or the teacher manuals, and then the manuscript is processed into defined structures to form textbooks or workbooks or teacher manuals. Well, for a learning management system as well, the entry point still remains the manuscript. However, the process is slightly different, and the way it is presented is something different. So learning management system is really a platform on which I, as a publisher, have the liberty to put up my content, spread it out, and display for the end user or the student to pick and choose what he or she requires. So it may mean that I have, let's say, 10 chapters following a gradation on, let's say, communication skills. So I offer it to my clients, to my students, or whoever the end user is, and they are free to pick it up the way they want it, depending on their level of competence, what they think right. So that's how the learning management system works. Online resources are plenty. Post-pandemic, we have seen a surge in online resources, whether they are assessment sheets, worksheets, whether they are, I've also included the question banks, plenty. Additional support material, extra reading, all of that put together, all of this is content. So the world is gradually moving from structured textbooks learning to learning management systems operations, where the end user is at the focus. The end user decides what he or she would want and picks up according to his level of competence and interest. So what exactly is content management? We will now go into a little bit more of the specifics. Those were examples, but how does one manage that whole system of content? What constitutes content management? We manage content according to certain parameters. First of all, according to subjects, whether it's maths or science or languages or social sciences. So these are essentially different filing methods, which is why we have different editors in publishing houses to manage the content in different subjects. Large publishing houses pre-pandemic had lots of editors to manage different levels of content, different varieties of content in different subjects. So we had maths editors, we had science editors, we had language editors, and language editors would mean not just English, maybe they would also have regional publishing in different subjects, and social sciences editors. Now, each group of editors would again be able to, how would they would also have to organize their content. How would they do it? They would do it according to chapters or according to units. When the author sends in the manuscript, it is up to the editor to group the content or the manuscript in a way that facilitates editing, in a way that facilitates production and going forward. So the editor would have to put the chapters together, which is why editors would insist. I remember, I mean, at least I would insist, and I'm sure all the other editors would also do the same, that please send us the content in phases. Don't send it to us randomly. So therefore, if you are sending us a book of, let's say, 15 chapters, please begin with chapter 1. Don't begin with chapter 15 first and then go to chapter 1, because that makes my work difficult. I cannot understand the gradation that you are following. So according to chapters or units is another method of how you organize content. Now there is, now I'm moving from, so the thing is from macro managing to micro managing the content. There are two ways. You have to have a micro plan, and then you get into a micro plan of managing the content. Go back. Then we organize the content also according to themes. So in a situation where there are lots of books being done, educational books or other kinds of books which are done, so you also organize your content according to themes. Themes would be stuff like nature or animal kingdom, sports, fitness, cookery, all of that. So that's also another way of organizing your content, because you have different sets of authors writing out on different themes. So you would have different filing methods for all the different content that comes into on the table. You may also organize your content according to your clientele. The pre-primary, I've included preschool because with the new National Policy on Education, preschool will be talked about and will be discussed and will be worked upon across the publishing houses. So far, it was just from primary onwards in K-12. However, now the preschool will be looked upon with a lot of interest. So publishing houses are bound to get into it. So now editors and publishing houses will have to focus on how to organize the pre-primary content, which would be very challenging because very few publishers will have an expertise in that field. And then the content, how do I say that it will be different and difficult, because the experience there is limited, but the market there is huge. So the preschool stage would be another means of organizing the content. I'm sure in publishing houses, we will see need arising for editors or people interested in preschool publishing as well. And last, I have put it according to language. I put it because there are cases of regional publishing as well. It may not be a huge market, but yes, there is some amount of interest in publishing. For example, back in Macmillan, I remember there used to be a regional publishing unit in Pune. So there are some such publishers who maintain regional publishing because it has worked, and there is a fixed clientele who subscribe to that particular variety of publishing. Now, who manages content? Publishers. It's obvious because they publish books. Now, this term, knowledge, packaging, and delivery companies. These are the new companies which have come up or either established or have come into prominence over the last 1 year. These are under this term. I put in. I have in mind various edtech companies, various online agencies, and other such agencies who specialize in online resources. So these are the people who come under knowledge, packaging, and delivery companies. They also deal in content and a variety of content, which may mean a variety of content, like, for example, assessments, then question banks, worksheets, support material for teachers, for students. Some also go into parenting support material. The last 1 year has seen a lot of online work being done across the in the education sector. So there have been few such online agencies or the knowledge packaging and delivery companies who have also thought about the parents, and they have curated materials on child psychology, on behavioralism, all of that, so that parents also know how to deal with children who are largely confined to the homes. School teachers, though it may sound a little funny, but there are some schools who manage their own content. They create their own content because but this content is limited largely to the primary section, because they have an ideology and a philosophy to groom their teachers. So they, while following the guidelines set by the National Curriculum Framework or the National Council of Education Research and Technology, the NCERT, and other such guiding agencies, these schools have their own materials, have their own methods to execute the materials which they create. And I'm given to understand that these materials work very well with the students, because they train the students differently, and they offer very engaging content which leads the students, the young children, to think differently and groom and grow up differently, as against rote learning. Now, the need for organized content. The need for organized content is, like I mentioned, to fulfill learning requirements. What are the learning requirements set by the syllabus or the curriculum concerned? To clear examinations. Now, if we are in the business of teaching learning content, there has to be an end product. There has to be an end. How do I test? So my content has to be organized so that I lead my students to the examinations, and therefore my content has to be organized in that way so that I am able to train my students to face the examination with success. Now, for professional growth, These are outside strict curriculum. For professional growth would be like, for example, teachers or people in the corporate sectors who need to upgrade their skills, who need to know more about the area that they work in. For them too, content is developed and organized to suit their requirements. If you remember, I mentioned about a pick and choose method in the learning management systems. A pick and choose method works very well for people in the corporate sector or who are already in the workplace domain, and they need content to upgrade their skills. So they know that, well, they have achieved a particular level. Let's say if it's a scale of 1 to 10 in let's say handling computers, and they know that they have the skills requirement which will promote them to, let's say, 6, but they want to promote themselves to 8. So if there is a system of choosing content which will take them to level 8, they will take just that. They will take off from 6 and not from level 1. So that's how it is. The content would be organized for professional growth. And for enrichment purposes would be something like, for me, for example, I may want to do a course on, let's say, cookery or on baking or on baking cookies, for example. But I don't need that certificate because I will be doing it just for my own self-satisfaction. So I take it up as a vocational course, and there are plenty of such vocational courses available in different agencies who offer these kind of enrichment courses. Of course, I mean, you'd have to pay for them, but the whole purpose is enrichment. These are life enrichment. So these are the few requirements that I thought are the needs why we organize content. Now we come to the more specifics. What are the issues when we deal with content? First of all, the clientele. I'll be dealing with clientele a little bit more in detail in the next few slides, but clientele is very important. Who is the clientele? Is it a child? Is it an adult? Or is it someone who's from the corporate sector, who's an adult? Or is it for enrichment purposes like we spoke of a little while back? Depending on the clientele, my content will have to be designed. What is the purpose? Is it syllabus based or is it enrichment? Accordingly, we would have to design our content, develop it, and take it to the end that it's that it rightfully needs. Now, once we are clear about the purpose, if it is syllabus based, then you would have to see that the content meets the syllabus requirements for that particular level, and it is followed in terms of the chapters, in terms of the divisions, in terms of the gradation, and in terms of the questions or the end testing pattern that the syllabus requires. The end goal, is it examination oriented or is it enrichment? If it is exam oriented, then we need to look at the evaluation objectives that are set. Is it knowledge based? Is it skills based? Or what is it? Or is it largely comprehension? Or does it have to do with a lot of analysis and synthesis? So based on that, the content would be organized and transacted in the required classroom or whatever be the delivery mechanism. Now, when we develop the content, typically in a publishing house, the cost and the market size becomes very important. Why? Because nobody's going to develop content for free. There has to be a budget. We work with budgets, and most often than not, budgets are stringent. Most often than not, we work on shoestring budgets. However, we also look at the market size, because that will be the investment. that will be the ultimate visibility of the content that the publisher creates. The size of the market will determine the demand and the need and the timelines that it requires. So often in publishing houses, what happens is there is a market survey, maybe which is done by the sales unit, and they estimate the size of the market. It's a small market, medium-sized market, large market, or an expanding market, and there is a projection of figures, projection of commercials, and based on that, the investments are made. So the cost and the market size go hand in hand in a publishing house while developing the content, and accordingly, the entire thought process revolves around the timelines, around the investments in terms of manpower, in terms of allocation of resources, optimization of resources, and the whole gamut of developing content. So this picture, I thought, sums up a lot of what goes on in content management. The issues, the customer, catching the customer is the core issue in content marketing. Once the content is made, it has to be sold. And if you sell the content, you need to be sure that there is satisfaction. If you see the way it is moving, the arrow, customer loyalty will come from satisfaction of the content. Satisfaction comes if there is a quality. And the quality is not an end product in itself. There will be a feedback support, again, the service, and the satisfaction is the reward. So all these terms, they move into each other and out continuously in this whole business of content management. Customer loyalty, satisfaction, quality, feedback, support, the services, and the rewards. So that is why I put up this this image, which is there in Shutterstock, that these are the terms which are interwoven all the time in this whole matrix of content management. I had mentioned about the clientele. The content addresses customer needs. Now, this page that I'm showing you, I will show you a few more slides on how the content changes its form, its texture, its color, and its methods of presentation based on who the customer is. So obviously, this is something which is this page that I'm showing to you is from a child's book. So you can see the layout, the visuals, everything has got to do with how to appeal to the child. So one of the mantras of content is to address the customer needs. What does the customer need? So if a child needs a happy and a playful book, so be it. But if an adult needs dense material, so be it. The content will have to be presented in that way. The user satisfaction, like in the previous slide, we talked about satisfaction, and that's the reward that the content developer gets for developing meaningful content. The user satisfaction. Now, this, I love this picture because it just shows, again, it's from a child's book. It's so beautiful. I mean, I cannot get over this particular image, that it's so beautiful and it's so close to our hearts. This is probably something which is so very close to our Indian scene. Another thing that I'd like to mention is when we develop the content, we need to be very discreet in what we put in. while it is very easy to get swayed away by market needs and what will sell, but we also need to be very conscious of the fact that we need to be rooted on our soil, on our soil, on our climate, on our cultures, on our traditions, and bring all of that in our book. Now this particular picture so much captures. I mean, this is a boy, and it's a story about about a sister climbing. So he's helping, and it's the summers, and it's summers, and they are climbing up to pick mangoes. So this is something which is so very close to our hearts. I mean, it's so very close to our Indian situations. Now, like I said, appealing to various users. This is a picture from an engineering book. Look at the content. It's so dense. It's dense and it's thick. But this is what works for engineering students, because they are much more mature audiences, and they need this kind of content. So so the content has been designed and presented to suit the requirements of engineering students. This is from a book on basic electrical engineering. So obviously the book would have lots of such figures and explanations on the figures on the basics of electrical engineering. Next. Now the engaging content. Now this has got to do with things with stuff which is in vogue these days. It is. I'll play this for you. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. It's a short clip. Yeah, so I thought I should show this to you, because this is the kind of things, these are the kinds of things which are being used a lot these days for educational purposes. No, next one, next slide. Yeah. Now these these are more issues. We have touched on some of them a little while back, but I thought let's reiterate. Since the focus these days is a lot on content, so we need to debate that if it is syllabus based, are we looking at a pan-India figure, or are we looking at region-specific content? If it is pan-India, then we need to adhere to federal policies, which would include, let's say, adhering to the 10 core elements set in the directive principles of state policy. And I mentioned 10 core elements of directive principles of state policy because at this point, I'm looking at largely K-12 education content. So which would also mean that if we are looking at the 10 core elements as enshrined in the directive principles of state policy, we would also be looking at the national education policy, what's new in it, what does it outline? And national education policy would obviously have to do with across the levels, whether it is preschool, primary, middle school, secondary, senior secondary, or even college level education and beyond. The NCRT guidelines. The NCRT guidelines are crucial for school education, and NCRT has its guidelines also for pre-primary level, which would be in use a lot in the coming months and in the coming years, now that the government of India has come up with the new education policy. But if it is region specific, while education is you know, in education we do have federal policies and central government guidelines, but states are also free to adapt it to their own local purposes. So there would be local guidelines to be followed, and there would also have to be focus on things which are local and popular. Stuff like texts, poems, short stories, dramas, folklores, which are pertinent to a particular region. Pictures, for example, by local artists, which would be popular and which should be included in content which is designed for region-specific purposes. Or local heroes, which may include local leaders, local poets, local religious leaders, and some such eminent personalities, which needs to be included in region-specific content. So whether the content is meant for pan-India or region-specific content, there are rules and guidelines to be followed, and it makes sense for content development agencies to adhere to them and to maybe customize the content according to the needs of the hour. Having said a lot about the issues in content and about managing the content, we also have something called content strategy. What is the content strategy? What are those questions that we need to address to ensure that content is developed and used the way it should be used? That constitutes strategy. So if we have to define what content strategies are all about, I'd say they are decisions on the content. That is, what to create, how to use, and when to use. These are the three major questions which constitute content strategy. It may include the content strategy. I've put this graph up. It shows how content strategy moves. It starts from creating, and which will go back to research. Then you have to measure, promote, publish, optimize. Now these are the different factors in content strategy. And a content strategy would mean what content, like I said, which content to use and when, what would come first, what would come second, what would come third. So all of that put together is content strategy. So content strategy would begin with the creating the content, but before that there would be a research which may be market research, which may be brainstorming, which may mean a literature survey, all of that. Then measure up the content. That is, you have to measure it up in terms of your commercials. How viable is it? Why should I do it? What would be my gains? What would be my losses, perhaps? And based on my commercials, I will promote my content. I will promote my content to the extent that what market penetration do I expect out of it? Or why am I doing it? Sure, am I doing it for philanthropic purposes, or am I doing it for commercial purposes? and based on that, I publish it. And once I publish it, then I know the acceptance. And if I know my acceptance, then I will optimize my content. How? I will show, my next slide will show that. It is again a circle, like with customer satisfaction and with the clientele. It is an ongoing circle. The circle does not end. It is the same with content strategy. See, it is all of that. You create, you research, you measure, promote, publish, optimize. Again, you go back. So it is a circle that goes on, and it is a continuous process. In publishing houses, we seem to think that the shelf life of a book is maximum 3 to 4 years, because that's the normal term when a normal term for a syllabus to get revised. So as long as a particular syllabus is being used, the book is being used. However, that content does not really die. That's the optimizing part of it. You don't really throw out that content once that book is no longer used. It's yours, and you optimize it for you rehash it. You hash it and rehash it for different purposes. And how you do it, that is your strategy. So now, even in strategy, we need to deal with a few questions. Once I have a content ready, if it is, let's say, for Pan India focus, can I adapt it for specific purposes? I had spoken of customization some time back. To my mind, going forward, there will be a lot of custom content coming up, because every region might have its own needs. And so therefore, we have to be prepared as content creators to hash out content for specific purposes. The willingness to manage with change or to move with change is something which we all need to be mentally prepared for the coming few months. If we are going to customize content, then we also have to know how to reuse the content. Like I said, that just because a book has lived its shelf life of 3 years, are we going to throw it out? No, we can't do that. Times are very difficult. We need to know how to reuse our content, because we will have, and that's my next question, how to manage the lists, front versus the back. All publishing houses have a front list, and because of the pandemic, the front list has taken a beating. So we would have to, while we create a front list, we need to talk about our backlist and optimize the resources which are available therein in the backlist, so that both the lists are strong enough to fulfill customer satisfaction. There will be a need among the customers for content in different forms. So how is it that we can hash the content and deliver so that the customer needs are fulfilled? That will be a very big issue in content strategy in the coming few months. Now, I again want to show you another slide on something which is in vogue these days. This is again a plate. This is from physics on. And I say this adapting to students' needs because like I said, in the coming few months, adapting content to student needs, to learner needs, will be in focus very much, because while we get used to a new normal, We are yet to find out what our new normal will be once the schools and colleges reopen. So our content would have to be hashed out and presented in a way that suits students' needs. No. Huh. And before I conclude, I came across this and I thought I must share it, that if content is king, consistency is queen, because content cannot work without consistency. I mean, if you have a chapter, if you have a chapter on grammar and you begin, it says nouns. Well, from beginning to the end, it should be on nouns, and it cannot change into verbs midway through, because then that will not work. So that is a message which I thought I need to share with all of us, since almost all of us deal in educational content. So everyone says the content is king, but who's the queen? It is consistency. So I leave you with that visual, that if content is king and consistency is queen. I've said all that I need to say about content. But I need to also thank a few people before I go out of this session. The last one. I need to thank from the bottom of my heart Prism Books Bangalore, Wordcraft Publishers Delhi, Tat Creations Noida for allowing me to use their visuals and their audiovisual creations for this particular session. Thank you so much. And also I need to acknowledge the valuable inputs which I received from Tanmay Roy Chaudhary and Anupam Chaudhary while creating this seminar. Thank you, sir. Thank you all of you for listening, and I'd love to enter into a discussion. Thank you. Thank you, Kaniz.
I have a question. Before the question comes up, we didn't see the clip with Andy and his accordion with sound. Was there a sound? Or it was supposed to be silent?
Should I play it for you? Should I play it for you?
Please do. Yeah, I have actually written that story once for a set of books. So I know the story very well.
Wait, I'll show you. Or you, Andy, and the... Go up.
Sorry for interrupting, Vivek.
No, that's okay. I'll play it for you, Kaniz. No, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait.
Just.
Kaniz, just hold on. I'll play it for you. That boy story. This one. Can you hear it?
Andy and his accordion. Once upon a time, there was a very cheerful boy named Andy. He had a dog called Max. Andy and Max went together everywhere. Andy had a very old accordion and he loved playing it. People praised him and offered him some money. Andy and Max often traveled about from town to town entertaining people. One day, they arrived at a pretty little town. It had a big square with lots of beautiful houses around. Andy thought that a lovely place like this would have many rich people. Some of them would surely enjoy his good music. Andy hoped to earn plenty of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think first time we missed the whole charm of it, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have put the computer audio on as well.
No, it was quite nice now. When we saw it separately, it was quite nice.
Yeah, but did you get to hear the audio in the physics one?
Maybe
One
not.
on pressure?
No.
You want us to play that as well? Hear that as well. These are quite nice. Pressure after this.
Shake the computer.
This one. Now can you hear?
Yeah.
In our daily life, we apply force and pressure to different objects while working. For example, to open or close a door, we pull or push the door respectively. Thus, force is the push or pull applied to move or stop an object.
They're quite well done. I mean, even the language is not is good, and many times what happens is in these in these audiovisual creations, the pronunciation becomes a problem because they try and have that neutral accent and whatnot, and they drop.
Yeah, even here the V and W didn't come out great. Very
They
nice.
come out great, but it's still but it's still reasonably better than some of the.
But it's very much what we talk. So
right, yeah, that's
understandable by the audience. That's the main thing.
Yes, that's the main thing. Often they say record instead of record, for example, schedule instead of schedule. Yeah, so that's why I thought I'd like to share this with you guys. Yes. For joining in and listening.
Yeah, thanks Soma for a very informative webinar. And
thank you, Vivekji.
If the participants have any questions, they are welcome to unmute themselves and share their query.
I mean, a lot of you are into a lot of content creation. I'd like to know your views on your views on how on your experiences over the last 1 year or so with content and how you've kind of dealt with it. There doesn't seem to be any.
You don't have anything as charming as what you showed, you know, all is all boring, serious stuff, like that engineering page.
So thanks, Soma.
Right.
And next week we will have the webinar on translation and editing by Priyanka Sarkar, who is a senior editor with Neogi Books. So that should be an interesting one. And on Saturday for the travel series, we will have Shubham Mansinga, who will tell us how to travel to offbeat destinations on a budget. So that again would be pretty interesting. We had one participant who will be presenting a webinar on the 28th of February, Esther Bardhan, but she seems to have left. Otherwise, I would have asked her to give us a small intro about what she's going to present. But anyway, thanks everyone for attending and have a nice day. We will see you next Saturday at 4 p.m. and next Sunday at 11 a.m. That's all for now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.